Good afternoon, YouTube. Already done one video today, of course, on the up and coming Gennady Golovkin versus Martin Murray title fight for the WBA Super World Middleweight title, the WBC Interim Middleweight title, and the IBO Middleweight title. Although no one really gives much of a monkey about that one. But this video is not going to be about that. This video is, of course, on another world title fight up and coming this Saturday, which is a rematch between Arthur Abraham and Paul Smith for the WBO Super Middleweight title of the world. Interesting on this one. The first fight, of course, happened late last year. A lot of people, particularly in the UK, at least, said that Paul Smith would get flattened. They didn't expect him to last more than 3 rounds. That opinion wasn't really justified. The only reason people really thought that was because Paul Smith had lost by a stoppage to both James DeGale and George Groves in the last few years, and hadn't really fought anyone of any significance to deserve a title shot in the first place against Arthur Abraham. So it was a bit of a surprise when he actually got that given to him. But for the first fight, I said to a lot of people, Abraham is not the big puncher he was in middleweight, and that's been obvious over the last. That's been obvious over the last few years that he's been fighting at super middleweight. That he's not had that power. There's only been one exception, which is when he pretty much destroyed Jermaine Taylor with that punch in the 12th round in Germany at the start of the Super 6 tournament. That really was a devastating punch. But apart from that, he didn't trouble Carthroch. He didn't trouble Andre Ward. He gave Deval a lot of trouble for the wrong reasons, of course, hitting him on the floor. But like I say, he's not the hard hitter. So when a lot of people were kind of saying, "Oh, Paul Smith's going to get flattened by Abraham," I was like, "Well, let's get real about this one." Abraham's power hasn't carried, and Paul Smith isn't the fighter he was when he got stopped by George Groves or James DeGale. He's actually worked on a lot of improvement in the gym in the last few years, and I thought people were just writing him off before seeing him. My prediction going into the first fight was I expected Paul Smith to call up a brave fight, but German scorecards are always dodgy at the best of times. I kind of said to people, I said, even if Paul Smith put up the fight of his life, I would expect the German scorecards to screw him over anyway. People told me, no, Germany's changed in recent years. Well, obviously it hasn't changed as much as people thought, because I don't think Paul Smith necessarily got screwed in the first match, because he wasn't, it's not like he went out there to Germany and absolutely battered Arthur Abraham for 12 rounds and it was clear that he was winning every round. There were a lot of close rounds in the fight, with Arthur Abraham doing his usual one-trick pony of last 30 seconds of each round, lay it on his opponent to win the round, which I just effing well hate. Really gets on my nerves. Who boxers who do that, they should just be punished and just lose the round anyway. It's just conning people and it's not right. John Pascal does a similar thing nowadays, especially if you watch when he fought Boudet. No thanks. It's not a fight I want to watch. It's not the type of fight I want to watch. But anyway, obviously the scorecards the first time were an absolute disgrace. I haven't got them to hand right now, but I don't think I really need to read them out. People all remember the result. It was quite publicised over World Boxing News, shall we say? But let's just get real. Arthur Abraham, he looked like shit in that first fight. He really did. He is not the power force he was at super middleweight. And Paul Smith, in fairness to him, he went out there, and I think Paul Smith, and this is the difference, I think Paul Smith went out there to Germany that night believing he could win, but not knowing he could win. And he kind of started off a little bit tentative, as you'd expect, but when he really got his boxing going and he got into his game, it became apparent to me, at least anyway, and I think a lot of people who watched the fight, that Paul Smith was the better fighter. He was the one dictating the fight. He was the one dictating the pace of the fight. He was the one that was actually being the aggressor, specifically in the later rounds of the fight. Arthur Abraham wasn't really in the fight, apart from doing his one-trick pony of the last 30 seconds of each round. And I think the judges kind of fell for that. Scoring it realistically, though, at the time, I actually scored it in favour of Arthur Abraham by 1 point. I just gave him the benefit of the doubt. Like I said, there was a lot of close rounds where Paul Smith should have been a lot more active, and maybe he wasn't because he was a little bit cautious, maybe a little bit by the power that Arthur Abraham was once capable of, which I don't think he's capable of at super middleweight. And I think in the end, if the judges had got it right the first time and maybe scored it a draw or scored it closely in favour for either fighter, I don't think there's an uproar. And if Arthur Abraham does keep his title the first time around on a close decision, then there's not an uproar. There's no need for a rematch. This fight isn't happening if that's the case. And I think that's actually shot Arthur Abraham in the foot in a big way. The reason I say that is because I can't see Arthur Abraham doing anything different. I really can't. The guy's fought the same way for years and years and years. You know, he can try and say he didn't get up for the Paul Smith fight. Maybe, you know, he can try and use the Carl Froch versus George Groves one excuse and say that he wasn't really motivated or underestimated his opponent. And you know, maybe to a certain extent that's true. Maybe. However, Paul Smith didn't give his best performance in that fight. I don't believe he gave a fantastic performance, but I don't think that was his best. This rematch, you know, if Paul Smith can land the body shots more, is what I would say. I want to see Paul Smith land them body shots. He's got a trainer in Joe Gallagher who works on stinging body shots, especially with Scott Quigg. You know, who, if people don't know, he's the WBA regular bantamweight world champion. And Joe Gallagher, he's a very, you know, he's known for teaching his fighters notorious body punching. Now, Arthur Abraham holds that high guard all the time, and a good body punch around that elbow, get him to drop them hands, get him into a brawl. That's what Paul Smith needs to do here. He needs early doors. This time, I said to you earlier, last time Paul Smith went into the fight, he went in believing he could win, but not knowing. I think this time he goes in knowing he can win. And I think that's the difference. And I think this time we'll see a different Paul Smith early doors. A Paul Smith that will get behind the jab. He will get the body work going. He'll be a lot more active, throw some more punches than he did in the first fight. And see, let's see if Abraham has got a response. I don't think he has. I still think Abraham will do the same thing. He will con his way through rounds, box his heart out for the last 30 seconds of each round. You know, and the German judges will probably fall for it again. Yeah, I want Paul Smith to win this fight. I really do. I think he's a genuinely nice guy. I do like the Smith brothers in general anyway. I think they're all very down to earth and sensible people in the world of boxing, on the UK boxing scene as well. So I wish him a lot of luck into this fight. I know Paul Smith can win the fight. German scorecards, he says he's going to get a fair crack this time, but I've heard that before. You know, I think it'll be a lot closer on the scorecards this time. But will he get a true fair crack? I don't think he will. I think he'll come out of this fight on Saturday, and I think a lot of people will score this fight at home or around the world, wherever you're watching, in a pub, wherever. And I think a lot of people will probably score this fight, if it does go 12, in favour of Paul Smith by maybe 8 rounds to 4. That's the kind of fight I can see happening this time around. And then I'll probably see the judges' scorecards give that to Arthur Abraham by a couple of rounds. And that's what I can see happening personally. I know Paul Smith saying he can stop Abraham. Abraham says he's going to stop Paul Smith. That's nothing more than trying to sell a fight. Paul Smith ain't got the power, I don't think. I hope he has. I mean, I hope I'm wrong. I hope Paul Smith can stop Arthur Abraham, of course. But I don't think he's got the power to stop Arthur Abraham. And I don't think, like I said earlier, I don't think Abraham's got the power to stop Smith either. I do think this is going to be a genuine old school boxing match. I think Paul Smith knows exactly what he's got to do going in there Saturday night. He's got a fantastic trainer in Joe Gallagher, who they've probably been working with for months and months and months since that fight. Well, it's not months and months, of course, only about 4 or 5 months ago, but they've probably been working non-stop since that fight, knowing they're going to get the rematch, figuring out game plans. And it's got to be the body punch. Activity, body punch. Activity, body punch. And just pressure. That is all he has got to do. I mean, that is all I can criticise from Paul Smith's first performance, was the lack of activity a little bit at times, the lack of body punching, even though it's a valuable weapon against Abraham. You know, just the volume. I think if he goes in with the same mindset and the same focus, which I'm sure he will. I mean, Joe Gallagher again, a fantastic trainer. I don't think he'll go in there with any stone unturned. And I genuinely think by the end of Saturday night, Britain could have one new world champion. You know, I don't think it'd be Martin Murray, as much as I would love it to be. But I do think Paul Smith. I think this one's in his hands. I think as long as he doesn't do anything stupid, and he boxes, and he uses the stuff that he's been working on in the gym behind the scenes, I can't see Abraham doing anything different. I really can't. So prediction for Saturday. You know, as a betting man, I suppose I'd probably hedge bet Smith on points with Abraham by KO, but I'm not even going to do that, to be honest. I'm not going to bet on this fight. I can't see a KO happening, and the points odds aren't really great. So my final prediction, just in general this week for this one, will be I'm going to go for Paul Smith, and I'm going to go Paul Smith on points. Although I can just see it happening again. You know, the scorecards might not be ridiculous this time, like Abraham 118 to Smith 110, but it will happen again. It will happen again. Smith will get screwed. I think Smith will outbox Abraham, and Abraham will get a close decision fight. And this time, the German response will be, well, you know, it was close. You know, at least the scorecards represented that, and I think people just won't accept that. But that's just me. You know, like I said, I hope I'm wrong. I'm hoping the scoring is fair to both fighters on Saturday. I'd rather prefer to see Smith just go in there and knock him out, but I can't see that happening at all. I think it's going to be a 12-rounder, Smith boxing, and Abraham doing his last 30 seconds of each round. That's pretty much how I see this one going. Let me know what you think, of course. I've not really gone into a lot of detail about this one. I just rambled a lot, to be honest with you, because of obviously what happened like 4.5 months ago in Germany. Yeah, so let me know. Let me know what you think on Twitter, comments page on here, of course. Same as usual. Any discriminate dickheads, leave your comment. You ain't going to get responded to though. Peace out.